Hey history buffs, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a legend, a word that strikes fear and awe, the assassins. You've heard the term 1,000 times, right? In movies, games, books. But what if I told you that this concept, this idea of covert operatives and contract killers, comes from a real-life organization? And their story is far more twisted, complex, and absolutely terrifying than anything Hollywood could ever dream up. Imagine this. It's 1092, a Friday morning in Baghdad. One of the most powerful men in the Islamic world, Nizam al-Mulk, the Grand Vizier of the Seljuk Empire, is walking to prayers. This guy essentially ran an empire stretching from the Mediterranean to Central Asia. He's surrounded by guards, layers of security that would make modern Secret Service agents nod in approval. Yet, as he moved through the crowd, a man disguised as a Sufi mystic approaches him. In a flash, a dagger finds its mark. The Grand Vizier falls. And the assassin? He doesn't run. He stands there calm, accepting his fate. This wasn't just murder. This was a message. A chilling declaration from a group that would terrorize the medieval world for almost 2 centuries, the Hashashin, known to history as the Assassins. Now buckle up, because we're going back to the 11th century. To understand the Assassins, we need to understand the chaotic world they emerged from. The Islamic world was a swirling cauldron of conflict. The mighty Seljuk Empire, a Sunni Muslim dynasty, was expanding rapidly. But within Islam, there was a fundamental split, Sunni versus Shia. And within the Shia branch, an even more secretive sect, the Ismailis, followed their own imams, believing they possessed hidden, esoteric knowledge. Our story's protagonist is Hassan-i Sabbah. He was an Ismaili, a brilliant strategist, and a man with an unshakable vision. Hassan was educated in the Seljuk court, reportedly alongside Nizam al-Mulk himself, but he became disillusioned with the establishment. He traveled to Cairo, the heart of Ismaili power, and committed himself entirely to their cause. When he returned to Persia, he knew he couldn't fight the Seljuks militarily. They had armies of tens of thousands. So Hassan developed a completely different strategy, one that would forever change the nature of political power. In 1090, Hassan and his followers seized the fortress of Alamut, perched high in the Alborz mountains. Alamut means eagle's nest, and for good reason. This place was virtually impregnable, accessible only by a narrow, winding path that a handful of men could defend. From this mountain stronghold, Hassan orchestrated a campaign of targeted political killings. But here's the revolutionary part. They weren't trying to conquer territory. They were using fear as a weapon. Precision strikes against high-value targets to create psychological terror. In modern terms, asymmetric warfare. Hassan couldn't match the Seljuks in an open battle, but he could eliminate their leaders, their generals, their administrators. And he did it in broad daylight, in crowded marketplaces, in mosques, in palaces. Nowhere was safe. The assassins developed a methodology centuries ahead of its time. First, intelligence. They had agents embedded in courts across the Middle East. These weren't soldiers. They were patient operatives, spending years building cover identities. Some became servants, guards, even close friends of their targets. They learned routines, mapped security, identified vulnerabilities. This wasn't impulsive violence, it was calculated, methodical preparation. When it was time to strike, their weapon of choice was the dagger. Not poison, not arrows from afar. A dagger. And why? The psychological impact. Anyone can shoot an arrow from hiding. But walking up to a powerful man, surrounded by guards, looking him in the eye and plunging a blade into him, that requires absolute commitment. And when that assassin made no attempt to escape, willingly accepting their own death, it sent a message more powerful than any army. No one is safe, not kings, not princes, not the most powerful viziers. If we want you dead, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. The very word Hashashin, from which we get assassin, has a legendary yet debated origin. The popular tale spread by Marco Polo claims Hassan drugged his followers with hashish, giving them visions of paradise. They'd wake up in a beautiful garden, filled with every pleasure imaginable, then be drugged again. Hassan would tell them they'd glimpsed heaven, and if they died on a mission, they'd return there forever. It's a compelling story, but modern historians are skeptical. The name more likely came from Hashashin, a derogatory term meaning lowlifes or outcasts used by their enemies. But the legend persisted because it tried to explain the inexplicable. Why would someone willingly die to kill a stranger? The real answer is probably much simpler and much more powerful: belief. Hassan created what we'd now call a cult of ideological commitment. His followers believed they were fighting for a righteous cause, for the true interpretation of Islam, for justice against tyrants. They believed dying in service to their mission was the highest honor. And Hassan, from his mountain fortress, was seen almost as a prophet figure connected to divine truth. Combine that level of ideological commitment with years of training in infiltration, disguise, and close-quarters combat, and you create something truly dangerous, a force multiplier that could punch far above its weight. Their targets were never random. Every assassination served a strategic purpose. They targeted Sunni political leaders who threatened Ismaili communities. They killed Crusader lords who broke treaties. They eliminated military commanders before major campaigns. In 1192, they killed Conrad of Montferrat, the king of Jerusalem, just days before his coronation. In 1135, the Caliph of Cairo fell. No one was beyond their reach. The fear they generated was so immense that many rulers simply changed their policies rather than risk becoming a target. That's power, that's leverage, all achieved without a single large army. But the assassins weren't just mindless killers. Hassan-i Sabbah was a scholar. He built an extensive library at Alamut, encouraging learning and intellectual development. The fortress became a center of Ismaili thought. Hassan himself wrote extensively on theology and philosophy. He created a hierarchical organization, the Fidai, the actual killers, expendable and utterly committed. Above them, the Rafiq, who handled support and logistics. Then the Dai, missionaries and propagandists recruiting new members. And at the very top, the Imam, the supreme leader. After Hassan's death in 1124, the assassins continued for another 150 years, expanding their operations across Persia and Syria. The Syrian branch, operating from Masyaf, became notorious during the Crusades. They played Crusader states against Muslim powers, sometimes allying with Christians, other times striking deals with Muslim sultans. They were pragmatic, adaptable, and always dangerous. Even the great Sultan Saladin, the legendary warrior who recaptured Jerusalem, feared the assassins, and he had good reason. They attempted to kill him multiple times. On one occasion, assassins infiltrated his camp and nearly succeeded. After that, Saladin reportedly slept in a specially constructed wooden tower and trusted almost no one. Eventually, he made peace, recognizing that fighting them was more trouble than it was worth. But no organization, no matter how feared, lasts forever. The end didn't come from the Crusaders or the Seljuks, but from the Mongols. In 1256, Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, marched on Alamut with a massive army. The Mongols didn't fear the assassins' methods. They didn't care about strategic killings. They simply surrounded Alamut and demanded surrender. The assassin leader, recognizing that the fortress couldn't hold against Mongol siege weapons and that resistance meant total annihilation, surrendered. Hulagu Khan destroyed Alamut, burned its famous library, and executed most of the assassins. A brutal end to one of history's most fascinating organizations. Yet, the legacy of the assassins lived on. They proved that a small, dedicated group with superior intelligence, training, and absolute commitment could challenge empires. They showed that fear could be as powerful as armies. They demonstrated that asymmetric warfare, targeting leadership rather than fighting pitched battles, could achieve political goals that conventional military force could not. In many ways, they were the prototype for every special forces unit, every intelligence agency, every covert operations group that came after them. Today, when Navy SEALs practice close-quarters combat, when the CIA trains operatives in deep cover, when special forces conduct targeted strikes against high-value targets, they're using tactics and strategies the assassins pioneered nearly 1,000 years ago. The methods are refined, the technology advanced, but the fundamental concept remains. A small group of highly trained operatives operating in secret can achieve objectives that entire armies cannot. So, the next time you hear the word assassin, remember, you're not just saying a word. You're invoking a legacy that stretches back to a mountain fortress in medieval Persia, to a man named Hassan who looked at the empires of his time and said, "I can't defeat you on the battlefield, but I can make you afraid to sleep at night." And for nearly 2 centuries, he and his successors did exactly that. What do you think about the assassins? Were they ruthless villains or strategic revolutionaries? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this dive into history as fascinating as I did, hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible stories, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.